Hey, I hope everybody had a great Christmas with your family and stayed safe. And we are looking at a new year and a lot of new challenges ahead. I think that's an understatement to say the least. We are operating with a new theme for 2021 at the ACLJ. We had our board meeting for the ACLJ and our related organizations, and the theme is the ACLJ needed now more than ever. Why? The challenges we're going to be facing in the next 4 years are going to be great. I could tell you that already. The fact of the matter is, and I think we have to be clear on this, that we have been through this before. So we're not getting caught off guard by all the changes that are likely to be taking place in the next several weeks. We've done this. You already said in previous programs earlier in the month, we talked about the situation with Representative Swalwell, and we got into that deeply. And we're going to work on it. But you have to understand that we've got to look now at a whole new slate of issues. It's going to be government accountability in ways we've never imagined before. It's going to be oversight of Congress in ways we never imagined before. We're on the threshold of a Senate election in Georgia that will determine who controls the United States Senate. That is days away. And that's going to have a big impact on all of this as well. So we as an organization have to look at all of these factors and then say, okay, how do we best utilize our resources to defend the Constitution, to protect liberty, to protect life, to protect freedom? But this is going to be a big challenge, and I'm going to start with challenge number one. Challenge number one is the state of Georgia. And I'm going to say this probably every day this week. You are days away from electing 2 United States senators. The Senate is in your hands. We effectively have seen, and this is true, and Andy Economo, of course, resident of Georgia, we are seeing a national election playing out in just days in Georgia.
I'm proud to say that the state of Georgia is in a position to make a decision as to who is going to control the Senate of the United States, and we've got to get out and vote. Don't listen to people who tell you not to vote or that your vote doesn't count or that absentee ballots are not good. It is better to vote in person if you possibly can. But remember that you hold the decision as to whether the Senate is going to be a conservative body dedicated to the proposition of law, dedicated to conservative ideals, dedicated to the propositions that we hold constitutional, statutory, the things that we have been advocating at the ACLJ for years, or not. And so your vote is going to count. It's going to be between a person who is a liberal, radical, both of them are, or someone who is conservative and who believes in the rule of law.
Yeah, you vote for whoever you want to vote for. We're going to tell you this. You got to vote. This is significant. We don't tell people who to vote for. But then it is the control of the United States Congress at stake in this.
Yeah, it literally makes the difference between a leader Schumer or a leader McConnell. And also, Jay, whether or not there's unified one-party control of all the main levers of government. Jay, I would say one thing to the election integrity question. That I know a lot of people are concerned about going down to vote in Georgia. Jay, the results on November 3rd were that David Perdue won by 2%, and all of the Republicans combined won by about 1% of over all the Democrats combined. So, yes, there's a concern about election integrity. But, Jay, everyone needs to go down and vote and exercise their constitutional option.
Harry Hutchison, our Director of Policy, we only got less than a minute here. How important is this vote?
It's very, very important. So much is at stake going forward. It's important to look back to the period between 2008 and 2016 when many radical new policies were introduced. The people of Georgia can take a decision on the future of the nation. So I urge them to take this election seriously.
It is serious. We're going to get into the issue that we think we're going to be facing coming up because it's serious. Hey, we're in the last week here of the month. Your support of the ACLJ, critical now more than ever. ACLJ.org. That's ACLJ.org. And any amount you donate, we're getting a matching gift for. So ACLJ.org. Hey, welcome back to the broadcast, everyone. Our theme for 2021 here at the American Center for Law and Justice, the ACLJ, is the ACLJ needed more now than ever, and needed now more than ever, and it really is. We're going to be posting in the days ahead pieces that Harry Hutchison, our Director of Policy, has worked on, that Jordan has worked on, and others, that sets forth the policies that we're looking at having to deal with. But I will start with this. This is from the preamble of what document Harry Hutchison wrote. Wisely, the American people continued to demand adherence to the United States Constitution, the rule of law, and accountable leaders. Representing our members and the American people, the American Center for Law and Justice has always been vigilant and forward-looking to advance our goals and mission. And Harry, that statement, our motto, if you will, our statement of purpose, mission statement, is to make sure that we defend adherence to the Constitution, the rule of law, and accountable leaders. But it's going to be a challenge in the months ahead, in the years ahead.
And one of the things that the ACLJ has always done, it has remained vigilant. It has remained vigilant to the principles which ground the United States. So if you look at the founding of the country, if you look at the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, that those two documents stand for the rule of law, and they also stand for limited government. We live in an era in which many radicals are driven by the intuition that the government should grow and expand and take up virtually all of our lives. We have gone through, and we continue to go through, for instance, a pandemic. And in some cases, that has unleashed liberal authoritarians to take control of the American people's lives. And we have stood with the American people, particularly in the arena of schools, and also with respect to freedom of worship, notwithstanding the fact that we do indeed have a pandemic. As Justice Gorsuch has said, the pandemic does not eliminate either the rule of law or the United States Constitution.
You mentioned the education issue, and look, Joe Biden as a president, based on what he said when he was running, it's very clear what their policies are going to be. Centralized government, centralized education, lack of parental choice, lack of school choice, beholding to the teacher unions. And we have, I think the number that we've assisted in our school choice program and our school education programs because of the COVID situation are well over 2,000 now. And we've gotten stunning results. I mean, we've gotten everything from computer access to special needs kids being taken care of. I mean, our lawyers have done, and staff have done just a great job. Thousands of people have been helped. But as I'm thinking about this, Stan, I'm looking at the education factor, and we know where this, what this could look like under the Secretary of Education and incoming Secretary of Education. It's going to look very different.
Oh, yeah. Control and decisions made out of Washington, D.C., Jay. I mean, the playbook's already out there. And look, all of the data is very clear on this. The further away from the student the decision-making gets when it comes to a child's education, the worse that education is. It's just not tailored to that student, Jay. That's why during this pandemic, we made a very intentional effort to engage on a student-by-student level. Yes, of course, there were school districts that were having challenges how to meet individual students' needs. But by coming alongside them, Jay, we saw real success in getting individualized plans created. And one of the things that we've advocated in Washington, D.C., and this is going to become a more significant hurdle in the years ahead, Jay, but is making sure that when the federal government sends dollars down to the local and state level, that there is still some flexibility for parents to make choices for their students. Now, look, I actually think there's an opportunity in the Congress to engage in a bipartisan way on this, but you're right, Jay. The Department of Education under a Biden administration is going to be hostile to that idea. But here's the thing. We're not going to stand down because the data and the facts are on our side. And this is the other thing I would say, Jay. The consequences are just too large. The quality of the education of our students is at stake. And if all of that power, Jay, goes to Washington, D.C., the quality of that education will suffer.
We have represented, you talk about the school choice, and this is where your dollars of the ACLJ make a huge difference. We have already represented parents in North Carolina, California, Michigan, Nevada, Nebraska, and other states. I know that we also have had students in Texas and students in New York. In addition to our work in helping these families facing the COVID-related school issues, we've also helped on a Nebraska case where a school student was allowed to exercise her free speech rights with respect to her decision that they were allowing students to go to school to represent a church youth group program, and they were censoring her in the middle of all this because they use this excuse, Andy, that the Constitution, as Harry said, and Justice Gorsuch said, they're using this, the pandemic as an excuse to squelch or eliminate. It's like you're taking an eraser and removing the First Amendment.
You don't do that. The true test of a constitutional republic is how much it adheres to its Constitution and its laws during a time of crisis. And I think Justice Gorsuch said that, as well as other justices on the Supreme Court who are conservative, right-leaning, and textual originalists. That is the test of whether a republic survives. In a time of pandemic, in a time of crisis, in a time of war, do you continue to maintain the constitutional rights that were put forward in the Constitution by the founders? Whether or not you do that is really the choice that you make, and that is important to us. We in the ACLJ have our school choice initiative. We have been involved in cases in which we have fought discrimination against religious schools, in which we have championed the ministerial exception that protects churches and other religious organizations from government interference in decisions about who leads worship or teaches religion. We have filed suits, I remember in California, against chanting and the use of incense and singing in churches. In other words, the government needs to stay out of the churches and let us conduct our worship the way we feel that it should be conducted. And schools have been helped enormously by the ACLJ, and that is the initiative that we will continue into 2021.
And I will assure you, and I think there's no doubt about this, Stan, that the fact of the matter is, with the changes in Washington coming, we better buckle up here and realize that this fight is going to take on a whole new dimension. You go from an administration that was supportive to one that's hostile. We've done that before. These cases become more intense. Now, the good thing is President Trump got 3 Supreme Court justices appointed, so we have a conservative Supreme Court. So when, as Andy just mentioned, issues like religious exemption so that religious schools can hire teachers in accordance with their faith and doctrine, which makes perfect sense, but it took a Supreme Court decision to get it there, those are protected. But they will try regulatory moves to squelch religious freedom or academic choice and educational choice. There's no question.
It's going to happen right out of the gate, Jay. I mean, right in the first 100 days, there's going to be regulations to roll back some of these victories, and they're going to be on a wide variety of issues. But just to hone in on the religious freedom issue that you were talking about just now, Jay, during the Trump administration, the president put out an executive order directing every agency to look at all of its programs and make sure that religious entities were not discriminated against, to make sure they could participate in all of the funding programs without leaving their faith at the door. Basically, to operate as a religious entity while they serve the committee. Jay, we filed formal comments in all 9 of those rules, and all 9 of those rules are now in force. I'm telling you, in the first 100 days of the Biden administration, all of those rules are going to look to be adjusted. But, Jay, this is an area I actually think we can win on, and here's why. People on the ground are benefiting from these organizations that are serving them out of the goodness of their heart and motivated by their faith. Jay, we're already preparing now. When those rules look to be adjusted, we're going to file an opposition, and we're going to try to keep them in force.
Yeah, but you bring up a really important point, Dan, and I want to go to Harry on this, and that is, the fact is, I mean, we're about to enter hostile territory. I mean, we've entered hostile territory before, so it's not the first time we've done it, but we're about to enter hostile territory, Harry.
Yes, I think that is an accurate look at the future. It is clear beyond question that hostile forces actually have been marshaling and mobilizing over the past 8 to 10 years. And one of the things that they have targeted is religious liberty and religious autonomy. And in order to have religious liberty, you must have autonomy. And the Supreme Court, in recent decisions, particularly in Our Lady of Guadalupe, has respected by a vote of 7-2 the principle of religious autonomy. Without religious autonomy, as I've suggested previously, the church or the church school cannot effectively determine its doctrine. It cannot determine who to hire and who to fire. And so we live in an era in which many people believe, for instance, that the non-discrimination principle trumps the First Amendment of the Constitution. And I think it is clear beyond question, as Professor Michael McConnell has said, that the First Amendment is indeed our first liberty.
And that First Amendment is going to be under attack. Now, fortunately, I think we've got a significant advantage in the courts now. And that's where the ACLJ comes in handy. Why? Because we have lawyers all over the United States. In fact, we have lawyers all around the world standing for freedom, standing for liberty, fighting for you. And we will continue to do that no matter who's in the White House. We're going to continue to fight for you. We need your support of the ACLJ last week of the month. ACLJ.org. Any amount you donate, we get a matching gift for. I want to encourage you to do that. ACLJ.org. Your gift. Any amount you donate, we get a matching gift for. Do it now. ACLJ.org. A couple weeks back on the broadcast, we talked about some of the issues that we face when we got a hostile government, how we handle it. And I think it'd be good to walk people through right now how we deal with agencies when we don't like what's happening, or like the Eric Swalwell situation, or what was happening to President Trump and others in our national intelligence. We now have as a senior advisor to the ACLJ, Rick Grenell. That's significant. Why? Well, Rick Grenell is a former director of national intelligence and an ambassador to Germany, a G7 country. We have expertise that's deep on these issues. But one of the things that I think people need to understand is when we see something, when we hear something, when we're concerned about an issue, we don't just talk about it. Talk is easy, but we do something about it. And that goes to our Government Accountability Project. And that's whether it's defending Israel, that's whether it's the abuse at the FBI, it's whether it's, this stuff with national intelligence. But I want to take you through the basics of what it means when we say our Government Accountability Project's going to work. So let me start first with Than before we get to the legal technicalities. An issue happens in Washington, Than, and you could pick 100 of them, but so just pick one. And then our office there, your office up there, goes to work. Let's describe what that is.
Sure, Jay. When it comes to our Government Accountability Project, the things that are important are knowing where to look and who to look at. And we can draw on a long range of institutional knowledge and experience. Basically, we've been here before, Jay. So when a problem crops up and we see an abuse inside of an agency, we know not only which agencies we might need to ask about that, but, Jay, we've got a long memory on which officials have maybe abused that power in the past. So when we want to reach back and we want to issue a FOIA and ask for records involving whatever situation it might be that has arisen, you got to know the specific office, but you also have to know the officials who might have been involved in implementing that. What we're trying to do, though, Jay, is get information that we, the people, are entitled to. And we sort of call them puzzle pieces because we don't know which ones we're going to need in the long run. But you gather all the puzzle pieces together, and then you start to put them together to build a narrative, not a narrative, Jay, to uncover the truth, really. How was our government operating? What were they driving at? What was their agenda? What was their motive? And I will tell you, sometimes the picture that it paints, Jay, is one of terrific abuse. I think probably the classic example was the IRS abuse, where there was political targeting of conservatives on the ground. I'll tell you, our behind-the-scenes effort, Jay, it's the reason that was exposed.
No question about it. And that took both litigation and FOIA work. But then, when we're talking about the Freedom of Information Act, that's a statute that allows us to get information from the government. Starts with a letter from our offices in Washington to these agencies. And it says, give us this information on these topics. And generally, they don't. That's generally what happens. They do not. And then, Andy, we go to court.
That's right. We file a request with the agency under the statute, the Freedom of Information Act, which is a federal law that allows the public to have access to information with certain exceptions. And then 9 times out of 10, the agency will stonewall us, whether it be the FBI or the State Department, which is the worst offender, or the Department of National Security or National Intelligence and so forth. And we then have to make a decision what we're going to do. And what we do is we go to the United States District Court for the District of Columbia in Washington, D.C. That's the forum that has been set for enforcing FOIA requests by the public. We start out by saying that this is being made on behalf of the American Center for Law and Justice. We seek expedited process, and we seek the court to intervene, to issue an order to these agencies that we've sent the FOIA request to to produce the documents. They usually then come back, and then we go through a series of lengthy negotiations back and forth about what they'll give or what they won't give. Sometimes we get a good judge, and that judge will order that the information be provided to us. We may get tons of information that's redacted. That means marked through in black so that we can't see what's underneath, and we have to then go back and say, you redacted too much. We can't really find out what you're giving us because it makes no sense. So it goes through a process of litigation. But it's painstaking, it's long, as you said earlier. You're finding a nugget in a gold mine. Occasionally you'll come up with something that is really a bombshell, but you have to persist in doing it, and that's what we do.
And you think about this, and like there are interrelations with even on foreign policy, Harry. We have sent Freedom of Information Act requests to the Secretary of State's office to find out what was going on with various presentations that were being made under the Obama administration regarding what? Regarding our relations with Iran and the Iran deal. That is how you get information, and that office is going to be more active now more than ever.
I think that is correct. We live in an era wherein globalists and particularly elites are inherently corrupt, and they tend to believe that the rules apply to virtually everyone else, but the rules do not apply to them. Right. And so it's very, very important that we have a government accountability office, and the ACLJ has been extremely active in vigorously seeking to hold these elites, hold these bureaucrats accountable. So we have filed hundreds of FOIA requests. We have received over 20,000 pages of documents in our litigation. But it's also important to keep in mind that some of these globalists and some of these elites are not in Washington. They are in state capitals, and we are also active in going after state officials. And so, for instance, if you look at the state of New York and the state of Virginia with respect to their attempt to pass radical policies,
especially on abortion,
on abortion, it's very important to know, A, what are they thinking? But in addition, they often refuse to enforce their own rules with respect to conscience exceptions, with respect to medical personnel who refuse to, for instance, participate. We have also looked into what the state of Ohio was doing in licensing an individual who was anti-Semitic, and she basically wanted to see Jewish Americans to be eliminated.
Yeah, through her medical practice. Unreal. Than brings up a good point, though. Used to be the Ninth Circuit was the go-to circuit for all this. Not so much anymore.
Yeah, we're going to have to litigate these, Jay, but they always used to run to the Ninth Circuit to file them because they had an automatic slam dunk win. Not anymore. There are 29 judges on the Ninth Circuit Court. 10 of them, Jay, 10 of them out of 29 were nominated not by a Republican, were nominated by Donald Trump. The spread on that court is now 16-13, and when you have to draw a panel from that ratio, guess what you do sometimes? You draw a panel that gives you a victory. They can't go to the Ninth Circuit anymore and get an automatic win.
Look how much trouble they gave the president early on his judicial nominees. I mean, unbelievable. And now we'll see what happens if the shoe's on the other foot. We'll also see what happens if you're in Georgia, if you're going to keep the Senate under conservative control. We'll see soon enough. All right, we don't tell you how to vote. You vote any way you want, but I'm telling you the consequences of this is very, very significant. Folks, as we close the broadcast out today, let me encourage you, go to aclj.org. Any amount you give is doubled. We get a match, so it's not you doubling it. You give $10, we get another 10. That's 20. 100's 200. Someone gave $5,000, it's $10,000. That's how it works. So we appreciate that. ACLJ.org. Again, support the work of the ACLJ. ACLJ.org.
One of the practice areas that we've been able to develop is Freedom of Information Act requests or FOIA requests.
it's thousands of pages of paper, and in those thousands of pages of paper, you usually find a nugget.
Government agencies acting out of control.
We have exposed that in our FOIA litigation, and we do that every day that we bring these cases.
It is your statutory right as an American citizen to have access to documents that reveal how the government is functioning, how your government is functioning.
We took it to the IRS. No one ever does that.
What the IRS was doing was violating the Constitution and statutory law. They can't do what they were doing before.
They've been hiding behind in the shadows. These FOIAs bring them to light.
How do we know? Because our FOIA litigation got that document.
Those of you that support the ACLJ, this is what it's all about at the end of the day.
It's all because of you, and you can double the impact your donation today at aclj.org. Go online and donate now.